Yeah, we have just a couple minutes. We have Stephen Shattuck here, who is the Chief Engagement Officer at Bloomerang, here to talk about what every fundraiser can do to retain your end donors. If you're not familiar with Stephen, you are in for a treat. There's always so many great insights I get every time I listen. So Stephen Shattuck is the Chief Engagement Officer at Bloomerang. He's a prolific writer and speaker, and he curates Bloomerang's sector-leading educational content and hosts weekly webinar series, which features the top thought leaders in the nonprofit sector. Stephen got his start in the nonprofit sector producing fundraising videos and other digital content, and he's an author, and he's incredible. So yeah, you're in for a treat. Check it out. All that great weekly webinar content is fantastic. So yeah, Stephen, I'm just so thankful to have you here, and thankful to Bloomerang and Kindful for being a sponsor.
Oh yeah, we wouldn't miss it. Thanks for having me. Let me pull up my slides here. Thanks, Candace.
Yeah.
Candace, Jenna, I don't know how you do it. It seems like the two of you are always putting on these awesome multi-day events, like every time I turn around. So great job as always. I know this has been an awesome event so far. I'll try to get the day winding down on a high note here.
Yeah,
But thanks. Yeah, I'm going to tell Rob to give you two a raise because you two deserve it. This is awesome. So yeah, this is great. Thanks so much for hanging out here. I hope you've been having a good day. I know you got some great sessions tomorrow. So I kind of figured, Candace said doing this event, and I knew you were going to get a bunch of really good advice today and tomorrow about how to generate a lot of year-end donations. And I thought, well, what if we talk a little bit about, hey, we want those people to give again next year, maybe even give a couple times before the end of this year. So take all the advice you've gotten for sure to generate some donations. And what I'm going to do is how to keep those people, because you don't want those gifts to just be the first and only gifts those people give to you, on Giving Tuesday or at the last week of the year. So that's what we're going to talk about here. So you already heard about me. I'm over here at Bloomerang. I'm literally at Bloomerang right now. Wish we could be in person, but hey, this is cool. It's a Zoom world, right? So retention. I thought since you're here, I figured if you're not skipping this session, it's okay if you are. But if you're here, you're mildly interested in donor retention. So I thought I would first just kind of give you the lay of the land on where we're at in terms of retention. And maybe you can kind of compare yourself to these benchmarks to see, okay, maybe we do need to do some work in this arena. And then I'm going to give you some other research on why I think that this year-end season is going to be the biggest one ever, quite frankly. And I think there's a real big opportunity, not just to raise a lot of money over the next 6 or 7 weeks, but also, you want to retain those people, like I said before. So the first study that I wanted to talk about is done by the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, FEP. If you've never heard of them, check them out. Pretty cool website. We do a lot of awesome, not just donor retention research, but a lot of other research into lifetime giving and giving trends from one year to the next. And the retention rate situation is such that I am worried that if you don't do some of the things I'm going to recommend to you, you could see some really low retention rates in 2022. And I'll kind of talk about why I think that's the case. But real quick, if you've never heard of FEP, they're a really neat collaboration between AFP and the Urban Institute. They actually work with, in collaboration with many of the donor management software providers. So Bloomerang being one, Donor Perfect, Neon, maybe systems you've heard of or maybe you use right now. That's great. Even though we're all competitors, we all get along and collaborate on this project. We send FEP our anonymous customer transaction data. They crunch all those numbers and they release a report showing how well all those nonprofits are doing at retaining their donors from one year to the next. So the most recent data we have is looking at, okay, what percentage of people who gave in 2019 came back again and gave in 2020. It's always kind of a year behind, right? Because we need the whole year to elapse. So in a few months, well, probably 5 or 6 months to be exact, I'll have the 2021 retention data, which will look at what percentage of people from 2020 came back and gave again in this current year, 2022. So, but this is where we're at right now. So about the average retention rate is around 44%. So 44% of the people who gave in 2019 came back again and gave in 2020. And if you've heard me speak or follow retention data or some of the other research in the sector, you probably won't be surprised by that number. It's been around 44, 45% for basically forever. It's kind of like that 2% of GDP that fundraising represents. That mid 40th percentile is basically where we've been. But one thing FEP also does is they look at the retention rates by specific donor cohorts, specifically first-time donors and then repeat donors, people who have made multiple gifts to these organizations. And this first-time donor retention rate is particularly germane to this conversation. For one, it's very low. It's only around 19%. So the people who gave their first and only gift in 2019, only about 19% of those people gave again in 2020. And why I think this is specifically germane to this conversation is most new donors give in Q4, right? So Q4 year end is a really big donor acquisition period. And I know everyone's mileage might vary. That may not necessarily be true of your individual organization or the person kind of sitting next to you virtually. But the fact that the first time retention rate is so low, and we're here talking about year-end giving, I'm going to give particular guidance on how to retain and specifically how to steward first-time donors. If perhaps Giving Tuesday is a big donor acquisition activity for you, for example, or maybe if you're using CauseVox to do some peer-to-peer campaigns in December or towards the end of the year, I'm guessing that you're probably going to acquire some new donors. And maybe this is the period where you're acquiring the most new donors compared to the rest of the year. We need to do some very specific things to get them to give again to your organization in 2021. Because if you don't, it's not at all a foregone conclusion that donors are going to keep giving. In fact, it's pretty difficult to get donors to move from their first to second gift if you are not proactive about it. But if you can achieve that, you can see the dividends that it pays in terms of increased donor retention rates. You go from 19% to almost 60% retention, which is great. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about here over the next 40 minutes or so is, okay, we're going to get a lot of new donors at year end. That's great. But if 81% of those people lapse, that can be kind of harmful for our organization, right? Especially if the cost to acquire those donors is higher than the actual gift amount that they give. For example, if you spend $20 to acquire a $17 donor, you've got lost ROI there. And I know it's really hard to calculate like an exact acquisition cost for one donor, but I think you see my point, which is that you need that second gift in many cases to kind of get back into positive territory. So that's a lot of what we're going to talk about. Not just first-time donors. I won't spend the whole time on that. All donors for sure, but particular attention to first-time donors. And I'll show you a couple other research points of why I think this is a particularly dangerous problem for this time of year. But like I said before, that average retention rate of about 44%, that hasn't really budged that much over the last certainly 5 years, but really if you go back in the 15-year history of FEP, that's basically where we've been at. So I show this for a couple of reasons. One, a benchmark you can kind of compare yourself to. Are you 40%, 50%? Okay, great. If you're above average, you're outperforming, kind of the rest of the pack here. The other thing, the other reason I show this is I think it's a real opportunity to focus on some of the things I'm going to recommend around kind of donor stewardship and donor communications, because most nonprofits aren't really making retention kind of their focus. And this is a really, maybe the best time of year to kind of get those activities, those plans made, because January and February are really, really critical times because there is kind of a window of opportunity to, do stewardship and get those people to give again. Now, one thing at FEP, we look at retention, of course, but we also look at overall giving trends. And last year's giving trends, I think, can inform what we can expect this year, especially for this year end. Now, 2020, despite it being a really kind of crappy year for everyone for a lot of reasons, I don't think I need to get into the specifics, you know what I'm talking about. But even though it was a bad year, donor support was really there, and donors really stepped up in a big way. 7% increase in the amount of donors, the amount of individual people who donated to the organizations in this study. That's great. Didn't necessarily expect that during such a tough pandemic year, a tough economic year for a lot of people. And those people who gave, they gave about 11% more in 2020 than they gave in 2019. Not only that, but this third stat is again, why I wanted to do this presentation specifically. There was a huge influx of new donors who gave for the first time to these organizations in 2020. It went up almost 19% compared to 2019. So again, despite all the difficulties of last year, despite all the increased need by us as nonprofits, and the fact that we probably were asking more and maybe communicating more than we ever have, not only did donors step up in general, but a lot of new people entered the philanthropic arena. Now, when you compare that pretty big increase in first-time donors with the fact that the first-time donor retention rate is quite low, 19%, and has been falling for the last few years, I am a little concerned that that 19 or that 18.5% of people who gave for the first time, they may not give again, right? And this is a really good time of year, and over the next few weeks and months is a really good opportunity to warm some of those people up. But then the really interesting thing happened was the recapture rate increase. So the recapture rate is the percentage of donors who gave in 2018, did not give in 2019, but came back again and gave in 2020. That was up almost 14%. And that's significant because it was up from a percentage of about 5%. It went from around 5% to I guess 18 or 19%. So pretty big jump from kind of the single digits into the high teens. But again, if you kind of follow that rate, I'm a little worried that perhaps those people haven't yet or aren't going to give in 2021. So again, there's kind of a stewardship opportunity inherent in that stat as well. But my main point is that there was a lot of generosity in 2020, and a lot of research that has been done since this report came out suggests that these donors plan on continuing to give as much as they did in 2020, which was an increase over 19, or more than they gave in 2020. A couple of reports I'm thinking of, specifically the Penelope Burke donor survey, the Blackbaud target analytics report. These have found, and you can find those or I'll put them in the chat if I have time here before we adjourn. Those reports have found that donor confidence, at least what they say they're going to do, is that they plan on giving just as much, if not more, this year. So when you couple that with the fact that Q4 is when most of the money comes in, I think we are going to get a pretty big influx of donations, especially if you follow all the great advice that my predecessors and tomorrow's and later today's presenters are going to give to you. But it all kind of is forming around this perfect storm, perhaps, of low retention rates next year. So that's kind of why we're going to talk about some of the ideas I'm going to put forward here with you. And this is not just my opinion, but Q4 is always the biggest quarter. For the last 5 years, and I think even further on previous to that, I didn't have room on the slide, every Q4 has generated more revenue than the previous Q4 before it previously. So I think if Candace and Jen invite me back next year, I'll have this updated graph and we'll see the 2021 bar, probably 5 to 10% higher. So this is the time, right? So if you're going to get this big influx of donors, you want to have a plan for them to give again for all those ROI reasons that I mentioned before. Now, I mentioned this before, but that first time rate and that repeat rate, they dropped last year. Specifically, that first time rate has been falling for the last 5 years, and now it's in the teens for the first time that we have been looking at FAP. So, all these donor acquisition activities are great. Do them. Don't let this discourage you. But you want to have a plan, especially to retain these brand new donors. If Giving Tuesday is a big donor acquisition activity for you, make sure you know what you're going to do, not just at the first of the year, but even before the end of the year, to retain these folks. So that's where we're at. What are we going to do about it? So there's a mountain of research into donor loyalty. I only have 45 minutes with you, and I've already burned through almost half of it. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a North Star for your donor communications of what are some things that you should do, how you should do them to make sure that all these year-end people give to you again, maybe even before the end of the year. That's not out of the question, depending on when they give. So one of my favorite studies, and I think I've shown this on other CauseVox webinars, so if you've seen this, I hope you won't roll your eyes at me too hard, but it really is a good kind of litmus test for your donor communication efforts. This is a study that was done by a really cool organization, by the Donor Voice, where they surveyed the donors of some high-performing nonprofits that had, they were high-performing because they had high retention rates. So these were donors that have been giving for many, many years, consecutively, or at least consistently, kind of cream of the crop donors. And Donor Voice asked these donors, hey, why do you keep giving to these organizations? Like, what are these nonprofits doing well to keep you around, to keep you giving year after year? And these were the top 7 reasons why those donors at least said back to the researchers of what these organizations do well to keep them giving. And to me, this is a really good, like I said, North Star to kind of guide your donor communications efforts, because I think if you do these 7 things, I feel very strongly that your retention rates can improve. But what we're going to do in the balance of my time here is, okay, how can we kind of bring these concepts to bear for year-end donors specifically? Because how you apply these concepts is going to be different depending on what kind of donors you're talking to, whether it's your online donors throughout the year, your year-end donors, your spring event donors. There's lots of different ways that you can kind of approach these things, but we're going to focus on year-end specifically, obviously, because that's why we're here. So number one thing is that the donor had a perception that these organizations were effective, right? So they felt like, okay, these nonprofits, or this nonprofit that I'm giving to, they do what they say they're going to do, right? They're reporting on impact, they're telling success stories, they're giving the donor a really good sense of what it is the organization is achieving out in the world, within the cause that they are serving. So when you think about, okay, we're going to get all these great, year-end donors, and maybe you're applying these concepts to your appeal activities, which is good too. Keep it going in the subsequent acknowledgements and stewardship materials, especially for first-time donors, because they're new, right? They're new to you, you're new to them. They gave, but they may not totally understand the entire breadth and width of your organization in terms of the impact you're making. So it's really, really critical to communicate to that to your year-end donors. So if you're doing an annual report, doing some kind of yearly impact report, that's great. You're going to be able to cross this first one off your list very well. But I'm going to show you some examples of how you can kind of get the ball rolling around year-end time. Number 2, the donor isn't caught off guard by anything that you send them. Particularly dangerous for brand new donors, right? Because they have no preconceived notion about what it is that you're going to be sending them throughout the year. So tell them, always be communicating back to donors, hey, be on the lookout for this, or hey, we're going to be sending these monthly newsletters or these monthly updates. The more you can kind of preview your future communications to donors, the better. And again, this is a really good time of year to do it, especially for brand new donors, because you may have a whole year planned of things that you're going to send. And we'll talk about some ways to actually do that in practice. 3, this is a big one. Donors want to be thanked, of course, but the speed of the gift acknowledgement has been shown to increase retention and loyalty. You cannot thank a donor fast enough. Now, this is perhaps the hardest time of year to achieve this third point here, because we're all really busy, right? You're all working on Giving Tuesday. Maybe you're finalizing your holiday campaigns, your year-end campaigns, and we're in this go, go, go acquisition mode. But it's also a very, very good time as those gifts come in to make sure that we are thanking those people properly. So a lot of times it kind of takes a little bit of a kind of a standalone or dedicated team of people, or at least some time carved out every day between now and New Year's Eve, where you're making some time to thank year-end gifts as they come in. It's very easy to just say, well, January 1 or January 3rd, whatever that first Monday is, you probably don't want to work on January 1st, but that's when we'll start thanking year-end donors. That's a killer. It's too long, especially if someone is giving, today on November 4th, that might be their year-end gift, and they're going to wait 2 months for a thank you. If you thank them now, you may even be able to get them to give again before New Year's Eve. So this one's tough. I know we are all just completely burnt out, overworked, under-resourced, but I would implore you, if you do anything that I suggest to you over the next 20 minutes, is leave some time every day between now and New Year's Eve to thank donors for their gifts, their year-end gifts, as they come in. Don't wait. Now, of course, your December 31st donors, you're going to thank that first week of January. That's cool too. You even get a weekend and a holiday there to pad your efforts. But the faster you thank these people, the more likely that they're going to be retained. And I'll show you some other stats to back this up. It's not just from this one report. 4, surveying donors, getting to know them, asking them questions. Why do you give? What prompted your gift today? Why are you interested in the cause? This is good for all donors, but particularly good for first-time donors because, again, we don't know them. We're not necessarily or not at all informed on why it is they gave. So, thinking of maybe your January and February stewardship activities, going back to these people and saying, hey, thanks so much for giving. By the way, how'd you hear about us? Why do you care about, the Everglades? Why do you care about this rare disease that we're fighting? Why do you care about the homelessness situation in our city? Asking them those questions and getting that information early on in the year will help you communicate to them subsequently, right? If you know they are interested in this particular aspect of your work, or they have this perhaps past personal history with you that can kind of guide maybe the stories you tell, or the kinds of content that you're sending generally, it's going to make those communications much more effective, rather than if you just try to send everything at them and hope that something sticks. Better to just go ahead and ask, because if you ask, them being asked is good, right? Donors appreciate that, but any answers you get, you can put into work in your communications for that entire year. So donor surveys, asking those questions, always good, but this is a really, really good time of year because you've got a whole year in front of you to craft those communications. And then 5 through 7, these concepts kind of start to repeat, right? They feel like they're part of an important cause. They feel appreciated. We talked about that with the gift acknowledgement. And then again, the storytelling, who's being helped, what's the impact, always good things to do. But if you can really give them a really good sense in January and February about all the great things your organization has done previously and is going to do in 2022, they're going to be hooked. They're going to want to be a part of that. So to kind of simplify that list, okay, what are we going to do with these year-end donors? Well, we're going to make sure they get thanked to the extent that they can as those gifts come in. I know this is a really hard one. Maybe it's every Friday for the next 6 or 7 Fridays, how many there are left in 2021. We're going to carve out some time to thank the people who gave in the previous week. That could be something that you do. And as you thank donors, not all of your year-end donors are made equal. We're going to look at some specific segments that you might want to thank in unique ways. We've already talked a lot about one, which is first-time donors, but maybe you also have your monthly donors. You have your people that, give every single year like clockwork at December, want to communicate to them in a different way. Maybe they give to specific funds or specific appeals that you're sending out. The more you can segment and not take a one-size-fits-all approach, the better the communications will be. And I think the better the results will be. Again, previewing what that impact is going to be. These are the things we plan on accomplishing in 2022. These are some of our goals for our service offerings and the impact we want to make. Give them a sense of what's going to be happening that following year. And then make sure that there's that two-way communication that is always open. Because when you create that feedback mechanism, you create a dialogue that creates engagement, and that's super sticky. So let's talk about some real brass tacks things that we're going to do here. We talked about acknowledging gifts as they come in to the extent that you can. Don't feel bad if you are going to wait till January. I didn't mean to make anyone feel bad, for sure, but that's okay, right? And so let's say you come in on January 4th, you've got all this pile of year-end gifts, or you're watching gifts as they come in. Pay attention to what kind of gifts they are, because not every donation is going to be the same as the one previous to it or the one that comes after it. Was it their first gift? Okay, are they a new donor? Oh, great, Candace, she just made her first gift to the organization. Let's lob a phone call to her, or let's shoot a little video on our cell phones and make sure that she knows that we know that it was her first gift. Thanks for joining the family. Wow, it's a busy time of year. It was Giving Tuesday, and you had tens of millions of nonprofits to give to, it seems like. Thanks for joining the family. Was it a gift, like I said, that they give every single year like clockwork in December? Hey, Sally, thanks so much for your gift. Boy, you've been giving for so many years. We so appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Was it a monthly donor who maybe gave an extra 13th gift, maybe on Giving Tuesday or around the holidays? Hey Jim, thanks so much for your donation. You're a monthly donor, but we noticed you gave an extra gift in addition to your monthly gift. Wow, thanks so much. We didn't want that to go unnoticed. That was above and beyond what we would have expected from you. So it's not enough to just fire off a thank you letter, the day after they give, that reads the same no matter who you're thanking, but look at the gift. What makes that special? What makes that unique? Because if you can kind of illustrate back to the donor that what they did and why it was special to you particularly, that's going to make them feel like, wow, this is an organization that's really paying attention. Because for the most part, the other stuff that they're going to get from other nonprofits is probably going to more likely be kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. And again, it doesn't just have to be frequency. It can be gift amount, if that is meaningful to you. I'm not a big fan of segmenting by gift amount, but there may be certain reasons to do that make sense for your organization. Was it a certain day? Was it Giving Tuesday? Are you a Jewish-run organization that a Hanukkah gift is really meaningful? Did you do a special day of giving in December? Was it the anniversary of your university in November, and that's why? So just kind of recognize, again, back to the donor, hey, we saw thanks for giving on Giving Tuesday. Thanks so much for giving on New Year's Eve. Boy, you got that right in under the wire there. Maybe not say that, but I think you get my point. Is just kind of tell back to the donor you saw what they did, rather than just waiting until January 15th and running that batch of letters and all 100 or 200 of those donors get the same letter. I don't think that's going to set you up necessarily for retention. It's going to cover you for thanking the donor, which is good, kind of the bare minimum. But how can we kind of surprise and delight the people that are giving here? Here's a cheat sheet for you. This is just pure advice here, no real fluff. So I've said this before, but if we consider the year-end season to be right now through New Year's Eve, okay, let's hold ourselves accountable and say anyone who gives in this period of time, they are going to get thanked within this window. Is it a day? Is it a week? 3 days? Set something up for yourself internally, right? Have a little meeting with the staff, decide, all right, we're not going to let more than a week go by or whatever it is. It's good to say, okay, we're going to thank these people as fast as possible, but have a plan. Do we set aside an hour every Friday and just run a report in our Bloomerang or Razor's Edge or whatever we're using, and just say, okay, who are all the people who gave? And if you have a high gift volume, don't feel bad. Do the best that you can. But if you're getting a few gifts a day, that might be manageable enough to stay on top of every single day. But create some plan for yourself, right? The less you plan, the less likely that it's actually going to happen. And then you may find yourself, it's no fun to come back in January, right, from a little holiday off, and then just have this stack of letters that need to go out. So this may actually, your future self will thank you, I guess is what I'm saying there. Second thing, I mentioned this before, but tell the donor that you know what kind of donor they are, right? If it's a first-time donor, you're not going to have any previous giving to mention, but that's a good opportunity to say, welcome, thanks for joining the family of donors. Can't wait to, tell you about all the impact you're going to have next year. But if it's been someone that's been giving for 50 years every single year, acknowledge that. It's a great time of year. It's kind of the warm and fuzzy time of year, right? Just kind of say those things. If people give on Giving Tuesday, thank them for their Giving Tuesday gift in that gift acknowledgement, right? You gave on Giving Tuesday, have that's a specific letter that you're only going to send those people who gave on November 30th, I think it is. And then people who give on December 1st, they might have considered that to be a Giving Tuesday gift. But the reason I think if you do this is it gives you the ability to go back to those people before New Year's Eve and ask them again. If you're feeling a little, not aggressive, but if you're feeling, a little energetic there may be reasons to do that, right? Maybe it was their first gift. Maybe they're a monthly donor who you could go back and ask for an upgrade from. Maybe you have some emergency in December and you need help. I hope that doesn't happen to you, but there may be reasons to go back to those people and ask them again. And I'll talk a little bit about what some of those reasons could be. First-time donors, we talked about already, as fast as possible. I've got some stats here to suggest that 48 hours is the window of opportunity. So again, that's going to be a thing where you're kind of thanking them as they come in. And then segmentation. This is a really important thing. If somebody gives on, let's say they give on November 28th, right? And then you've got a Giving Tuesday appeal going out on 11:30, right? That may be too soon to ask that person to give again, right? Imagine they give and then they haven't been thanked yet. And then they get bombarded on Giving Tuesday by your stuff. And it's like, geez, I just gave, 2 days ago. They haven't even thanked me. I'm already getting all these appeals. So be careful, right? You might want to filter some people out from appeals depending on, the timing of their gifts, because you probably got a lot of stuff going out the door, which is good. Follow all the advice that you've heard today and you're going to hear tomorrow. But I think one reason why retention rates tend to suffer a little bit during this time of year is we tend to kind of bombard people, right? And then the last couple of things are, watch out for monthly donors who give above and beyond. This is such a good stewardship opportunity, and it will really, really stand out to people. If you can say, hey, you're a monthly donor, but you also gave on Giving Tuesday or you gave on New Year's Eve or whatever. Wow, thanks. We noticed that. We thought that was really cool. That will make an impression, I promise you, because I've done that. And, I can count on one hand, maybe even on one finger, when somebody has actually said, hey, that was pretty cool. You're a monthly donor, but you also gave. That's awesome. And then online giving. And this is what I'll leave you with, because Candace, I'm almost out of time, right? Send me in the chat, tell me how much time I have. I know I've been going fast here, but online giving, there is a lot of online giving activity that is happening this time of year. make sure that when they give, and if you use CauseVox, this is no problem because they do a really good job of this. Make sure that they get good automatic messaging from your technology after they give. And I'll give you some examples of that here in just a second. So personal outreach is good. It doesn't just have to be a thank you letter. Handwritten notes are great. You probably hear that all the time. But last year end, so 2020 year end, and really 2020 as a whole, not just during year end, but we saw our customers have really big revenue increases when they were calling donors, sending personal emails to donors, and logging in-person interactions. So certainly in person, if they were able to visit people in a safe way last year, but also doing things like this, Zoom calls, FaceTime calls, kind of that personal connection with people. So as you're thinking about, okay, we're going to thank all these people as they come in. It can be a phone call, it can be a personal email, like you're literally opening up Gmail and writing one email to one person. This is an example of one I got a couple year-end seasons ago, a couple Novembers ago, where I gave a gift. Actually, I had started a monthly commitment, which was a really interesting signal, by the way. I should have mentioned that, but if their year-end gift is the start of a monthly commitment, acknowledge that, thanks for becoming a monthly donor. That's what this email did. Thanks for becoming a monthly donor. You and your family are able to do all these great things as a monthly donor. And then here's a quick 2-minute thank you video where it was him just talking into the webcam, right to me, right to Steven, totally disposable video, but really made an impression on me. So again, another sneaky good activity. Hey, every Friday, between now and the end of the year, let's carve out a half hour and just make quick little thank you videos, 20 seconds, 40 seconds tops, for all of our first-time donors, or maybe for all of our new monthly donors. So like I said, create those segments, because not all of your year-end donors are going to be the same kind of donors. And maybe weave in some thank you videos or some phone calls. We found that phone calls were really, really impactful for first-time donors specifically, especially if you could call them quickly. So if you're wondering, okay, what are we going to do with all these new donors, because that retention rate is only 19%, let's call them. If you get a phone number. If you don't get a phone number, I don't recommend that you try to run down their phone number or call their employer or anything like that. It would be a little weird. If somebody gives online, they give you their phone number, it wasn't required, and they're a brand new donor, I would try to call that person, within 48 hours of their giving, because we saw higher retention rates. Their second gift came in faster within 2 months. So boom, they gave in February, right? If they gave in for the first time in December, and then you got them, they went from 19% to 60% retention. You're in good shape there. And they gave more. The average gift size doubled if they were called. So we found that that window of opportunity is best within 90 days. So again, if somebody gives today, you could wait till January if they're a first-time donor, but if you thank them right away, you've still got a lot of November and all of December for them to potentially give again if they do receive those subsequent appeals, if you don't filter them out like I suggested in that one use case. So could be something to do, but carve out some time. I know you're going to be exhausted on December 1st, and then we're going to have all of December to go. But I really do think this carving out some time for this will pay some long-term dividends for you, and then you'll never miss doing that next year. Have that communication plan, right? So we've talked a lot about the immediate, first couple of days, but somebody gives on, December 15th or December 31st, they're a new donor. Okay, what are they going to get from you in those first 90 days in that first quarter of next year? Have a plan. And you don't have to do this for just new donors. You could do this for any type of donor segment that you think is valuable. But we talked a lot about the phone call, that thank you letter, as quick as you can. Couple of things I would highlight that you might want to try for first-time donors in January or February are surveys and a tour invitation. So surveys are good. They give in December, maybe in January, they get a survey that says, hey, thanks so much for giving. Thanks so much for joining the family of donors. We'd love to know more about you. How did you hear about us? If you don't already know that information, why did you give? Why do you care about our cause? What would you like to hear from us in terms of our communications? There's a lot of good things you can ask. Don't ask a ton of things. You don't want to overwhelm those people. And then a tour invitation. I love for first-time donors for the same reason as the survey. You don't know them, right? And they may not know you very much. Even though they gave, they may not totally understand all of the awesome things you do. But tours in January and February, I know it might be cold, I'm sorry, for those of you in the northern half of the country, I suppose, but it's a great way for them to really get a sense of all the great things you do. And it can be a nice thing that you can have going on in January and February when those tend to be kind of slower months, right? Maybe you do it virtually. If you don't want people inside, you want to stay safe, I understand. If you're an outdoors organization, if you can go outdoors, great. If a tour doesn't really lend itself to the type of organization you are, maybe you do advocacy or research. Maybe it's a standing Facebook Live, with a subject matter expert or your ED or someone that is really boots on the ground in your cause. That I think could take the place of a tour and say, hey, we do this every third Wednesday of the month for brand new donors. It's a little exclusive, right? So you can invite them to it. And if they come, that's great because it's an engagement signal. But if they're there and they're soaking up that content, that's gonna, again, increase the engagement. So again, just some things to think about. What are you gonna do in Q1 for all these people? We talked a lot about the immediate stuff, but plan out those things, have a plan and know what it is you're going to send. And that'll just kind of help you, stay accountable. Surveys I talked about for sure, lots of good questions you can ask. Last thing, and I already touched on this, but retention rates for online donors are lower than offline donors. So my last bit of advice for you, and I mentioned this before, is all your online giving automation, that automatic email receipts that goes out to people. Is it boring? Is it robotic? Is it kind of scary looking? Or is it a nice gift acknowledgement? So go into your software. If you aren't using CauseVox, you should be using them because they make it really easy to do this and their stuff looks good out of the box, I know, but donate to yourself. First of all, make sure your donation pages are working because this is a really bad time of year for them to stop working. But when they get that automatic email and that confirmation page on your website, does it say thank you? Does it start to tell a story? Does it show the impact that you're making? That's what we want to happen there. And that happens immediately. And this is kind of a one-time quick fix. So you can do probably today or tomorrow if you want before the weekend. But don't send those boring, receipts. Nobody wants to get a receipt, but they do want to get a really, really nice thank you from you. So that's it from me. Candace, if you want to come back and field questions, I don't want to keep, I know you got some cool stuff coming up later on in the rest of the day, but I'm happy to do some questions for whatever time.
Yeah.
Me off stage.
We have a few minutes here and I would love to go over any questions. We did have one question come in that was just asking about exactly when to send the donor surveys at year end.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. It may be too late to just send them out kind of apropos of nothing, right? But if we're talking after a gift is made, I think there are some sneaky good things you can do. So for online giving, on your website, they donate, right? They fill out the form, they put their credit card number in, they click donate, and then they are taken to like a thank you page of your website, right? A confirmation page or a splash page or something like that that says, okay, thank you, your donation is being processed, thank you very much, blah, blah, blah. That page is a good place to put kind of a generic survey. And what I would do on that page is I would put a little form, that says, thank you, your donation is being processed, blah, blah, blah. I put a little form that says, what prompted your gift today? And then just a little text box, just free form. The way that question is written, it applies to every donor, right? Whether it's their first gift or their 100th gift, whether they gave $5 or $500, what prompted your gift today? And you're not going to get a ton of responses. So if one donor out of 50 fills that out, don't feel bad. Usually these surveys have about 10%. So 1 out of 50 is not 10%, but I was an English major, sorry, not a math major, but 10% is pretty good. But the stuff you do get from those donors can be really, really insightful. And as year end unfolds, and as those gifts come in, you may start to see perhaps patterns or get a sense of maybe what messaging or channels are working perhaps better than others. Plus, you may get some really interesting information about those donors that you can use in your subsequent communication. So that's a nice one that's kind of passive that you could all do right now. Then as donations come in, I would focus on first-time donors. I think that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck for donor surveys. As new gifts come in and you're thanking them, maybe you're making phone calls or those little videos or whatever you're doing. You don't have to be super aggressive on the survey. I think that new donor survey can come in January or maybe in February. And it's also a nice opportunity to go back to those people and say, hey, thanks so much for giving at the end of last year. We noticed it was your first gift. Thank you so much for your first gift. Thanks for joining the family. We'd love to get to know you more. Would you fill out this short 3 questions is what I would do. How'd you hear about us? Why do you care about the cause? And then, leave that third question as kind of a wild card, depending on your individual organization. It could be, gosh, I don't know, are you planning on coming to any of our events, or, how easy was it to donate? That may be a nice kind of generic catch-all to kind of perhaps gauge any friction that you have on your website, perhaps. Don't say give online unless you know they gave online, right? So that may be another segmentation activity. But the point is, how did you hear about us and why did you give? Are really 2 really good questions for first-time donors. And I think, sorry, I'm now finally getting to the answer to this question, which is a really good question. That's okay. That can be January, February. Thank them as it comes in. They get a phone call or a letter or whatever, a welcome kit, perhaps they get. I think the survey can come, a few weeks, maybe even a month or 2 after that. But don't wait. I wouldn't wait till like March for these new year-end givers. But if you can, go to your website, people or whatever, and see if you can add that little survey on your confirmation page, because that can just sit and just be a vacuum, very passively for some good information as it comes in. And maybe, set it up to where you get those to come into your email inbox as they come in. It could be interesting to look at in maybe a meeting or a strategy planning session, saying, okay, this is what people are saying. Should we make some pivots? Should we pump something up, or whatever? It could be interesting.
Yeah, awesome. So many good insights. I love it. Wow, this has been incredible. I don't know. Let me see if there are any more questions coming in. Site 1 says, great session, Stephen. It's always so good because, we put in all of this effort, right, to get all of these donors for year end. But if they don't stick around, like, what is the point? Yeah,
that's it.
These funds once, but you need to make it sustainable, and you need to, or you want to build long-term relationships with people. It shouldn't just be chasing the year-end gift. So
Candace, you said it better in 1 sentence than I did in 45 minutes. So just replay that next year. I won't have to come back. That is the perfect answer, right? And it'd be a shame because you put all that effort in, like you said. And some of this can be fun, right? I think some of this could maybe even be a little bit of a respite from just the go of this season, right? And always good to connect with the people who support you, because you may learn something that you didn't know you were doing well. It doesn't always have to be bad stuff, but get some good feedback.
Yeah,
It's good for the soul, right?
absolutely. No, all of this is so good. So thank you so much, Stephen, for being here and
Anytime.
sharing all this great data and great insights into donor retention. Again, thanks to Bloomerang and Kindful for being a sponsor and making this possible. So yeah, this only exists because of you. So thank you again.